Good afternoon. My name is Julie Lenzer, and I am the Chief Innovation Officer for the University of Maryland in College Park. And I am here to welcome you to this inaugural Small Business Policy Recovery Hackathon. Very excited. We have a great next hour and a half or so for you. So really excited to welcome people on Facebook Live, on YouTube Live. And I just want to give out my thank yous to all of our presenters. You're going to hear some great innovative policies. We're going to follow it by questions. And before we get started, though, we have a couple of remarks. And at this point, I want to thank the Small Business Development Center and welcome Paul Bardak, who's the Executive Director for the SBDC, to add his opening remarks.
Thank you, Julie. Hi, everyone. My name is Paul Bardak, and I'm privileged to serve as Director of the Maryland Small Business Development Center. Our Small Business Development Center consultants, trainers, and administrators located statewide have seen firsthand the devastation caused by COVID-19 to the state's small business sector. And so we are proud to co-sponsor today's Public Policy Hackathon to allow us to share with Maryland legislators some of our observations and insights regarding the needs of Maryland's entrepreneurs in every corner of our state. Now, it takes a lot of behind-the-scenes work to make an event like this happen. And so I'd like to thank some of the people who are responsible. Dr. Fred Poker, world-famous expert on the use of knowledge management within multi-generational workplaces. Fred advised our workforce policy group. Christian Conroy, a leading voice for small business development centers and a senior member of the SBDC National Trade Association. Christian advised our economic ecosystem policy group. Zachary Kaplan, a senior member of DAI, perhaps our country's most globally influential economic development consulting firm and head of its sustainability practice. Zach advised our child care policy group. Stephen Colella, a leader of our Maryland Small Business Development Center team, responsible for administration of our federal CARES Act funds. Stephen advised our nonprofit policy group. And John Deary, founder and president of the Center for American Entrepreneurship. John advised our Women and Minority Business Assistance Programs policy group. Fred, Christian, Zach, Stephen, John, thank you for all you've done this past month to bring us to today's session. And now I'd like to introduce the moving force behind today's Public Policy Hackathon, Maryland State Senator Katie Hester. Senator Hester represents Howard and Carroll counties, and force is indeed the correct word to describe her, because Senator Hester and her incredible staff were truly the driving force and the visionaries behind today's event. For that, we all thank her. Senator Hester?
Thank you very, very much, Paul. Great introduction. I'm really excited for today. As Paul said, my name is Katie Hester, and I'm pleased to represent Ellicott City, Howard County, and Southern Carroll County. And I want to add my thanks to the University of Maryland and the Small Business Development Center, and also the Senate Bipartisan Business Working Group for providing their support throughout the process. There's about 10 senators from the state of Maryland who are truly interested in small business. Actually, we're all interested in small business, but 10 of them have been with me on this journey for the past 18 months. Before we get started, I wanted to just say a little bit about my professional experience and what inspired this hackathon. I've worked in international development, working with the private sector and governments, building public-private partnerships to solve difficult problems. And I know that when times get tough, people get more creative, and that's exactly what we're doing here today. It's no secret that COVID has posed some of the hardest challenges many of us have faced in our lifetimes, and it's particularly true for small businesses. This event will bring together academics, entrepreneurs, small business consultants, students, and policymakers who have come up together to offer their creative solutions to meet the needs of small business. So as Paul said, there's many different groups who will be pitching to us this afternoon. They focused on 5 key policy areas related to small business, including building a better business ecosystem, supporting employment at nonprofits, supporting small minority and women-owned businesses, supporting childcare so people can get to work, and of course, workforce development. Each team will have 5 minutes and 5 slides to convince us that their idea is the best one. I'd also like to thank our expert review panel, who is here to help us ask questions of those ingenious minds offering their pitches. On this expert review panel, we have Bob Orr, Dean of Public Policy at the University of Maryland. Mr. Bob Orr currently serves as the Dean and has and under Secretary General and Special Advisor to the UN Secretary General on Climate Change, which is awesome. We also have Margaret Wood, Vice Chair of Maryland's own Economic Development Commission. Ms. Wood has led a distinguished career as a computer scientist, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and teacher. Welcome, Margaret. We also have Kaylee Locklear, President of the Maryland Retailers Association. She has worked in Maryland state politics for the last 14 years. And prior to this role, she worked as a Deputy Executive Director at the Baltimore Jewish Council. Next, we have Ben Wu, President and CEO of the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation and former Commerce Deputy Secretary. We also have Alan Gutierrez, Associate Administrator for the U.S. Small Business Administration, Office of Entrepreneurial Development. Welcome, Alan. Thank you so much for being here. And finally, no relation, we have Donald Fry, President and CEO of the Greater Baltimore Committee. Mr. Fry has been President and CEO of the committee for some time, one of the most influential business and civic organizations in the state of Maryland. We will also be joined today by Secretary Kelly Schultz from the Maryland Department of Commerce and Rhonda Ray, the Managing Director. And I'd like to just thank all of you for being here today. In the interest of making sure we're efficient and on time, I just want to ask my fellow senators, if you have any questions, please send them to my Chief of Staff, Nathan, and we'll make sure that we get them asked in proper order. So once again, thank you all so much for being here. And now I will pass it over to our very own Secretary of Commerce, Kelly Schultz. Secretary, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh my gosh, of course. Thank you so much, Senator. I'm hoping that all of my mutes are off and everyone can hear me well at this point in time. I have been on and off Zoom meetings all day, so it's always interesting to see if the settings on my computer transfer over to everybody else. But thank you. I really appreciate it. Assuming, Senator, you can hear me, just a little nod. Okay, all right, good. Thank you. And what a great idea this is. And I just want to acknowledge that, unfortunately, when I received this invitation, I'm in back-to-back Zoom calls. I just got off the Legislative Black Caucus meeting with their economic development team, and I have to go on to another Zoom call right after this with other legislators. But it's really important for me to be here and for you to know that Rhonda Ray, who is the leading expert on everything when it comes to economic development, statutes and legislative agendas and ideas over the course of the past, Rhonda, I'm not gonna pull you under the bus, but a couple of decades, that she has a lot of history. And so she's gonna be very helpful in asking some questions that might be pertinent to your efforts. But I just want to say that Maryland is a place that prides ourselves on innovation. And for years, we've been ranked as one of the most innovative states in the nation. And the Maryland Department of Commerce, formerly DBED, formerly several other names prior to that, spent its entire summer researching and searching for and promoting the most innovative startups and entrepreneurs in the state through our Innovative Uncovered initiative. And it's really important for us to understand that the time is now in order for us to be able to develop these companies and these businesses and moving forward. And we have the best statutory platform in the nation in order to be able to do so. When people say innovation, we tend to immediately think of cutting edge technology, new computer systems, genetically engineered cancer treatments, things like that, which I will never be able to understand because I am not a scientist. My children remind me of that because I'm a political scientist and they are real scientists, and they remind me that I am not a scientist, Mom. But I think we are pretty good at that. But it can also just mean new ideas, creative solutions, and new ways of thinking about problems as we want to solve. Maryland is not just a place where new technology is developed, but where bold new ideas are developed and nurtured. And applying those new ideas to the realm of public policy is really very exciting. And I think that's why we're here today. So this year in particular, it's shown us how suddenly the world can change and how quickly our business community can find itself facing a host of extraordinary challenges. And one day you might be thinking about how to get the most revenue out of the summer season. And the next day you might be worried about whether you can keep your doors open for another week, right? That's where we've been. And so the state was able to assist over the course of the last 8 months or so, about 11,000 plus businesses through our loan and grant programs, businesses that we may not have ever had a tie to in the past because they were not a part of those key industries. And we saw many businesses embrace new ideas, such as really unique, fun, cool outdoor dining, or pivot to producing personal protective equipment, that PPE in the manufacturing enterprises. And all of those integral, collaborative, innovative, resilient changes that they have made has allowed Maryland to be one of the fastest growing economies, state economies in the nation, number 7 at this point in time. But even though Maryland has made great strides in our recovery and we are well positioned to build on our progress, our business community will be feeling the impact of the pandemic for a long time. We understand that, we get it. And the way we do business has changed. Understanding that, the way we consume has changed. Mask wearing and social distancing are going to be with us for some time, I hope. Mask on, Maryland. We want to keep Maryland open for business. Our business community is still going to need some support. And no single policy or program is going to make the biggest hit, right? We're going to need a view for the future for all businesses in all industries and all sectors in order to be able to grow and to expand. So we're excited to see a lot of bold new ideas, and I'm always interested in that as a scientist, a political scientist per my degree, and it needs to be a team effort. And I'm pleased that our team at the Department of Commerce, the Small Business Development Center, the University of Maryland, the senators, of course, in this group are coming together in order to be able to look at what some of those ideas might be moving forward in the future. So thank you, Senator, for your time and for your passion.
Thank you so much, Secretary. I was talking to myself on mute again. Appreciate you being able to join us, and we're delighted that Rhonda can stay and help ask some tough questions. Okay, I believe that probably brings us to our first pitch. Is that correct?
You got it.
Okay.
When would I like, you want me to start now?
Sure.
Yes,
Karen, can you just introduce
sure.
yourself and say which group you're from?
Sure. So welcome to the Small Business Hack-A-Thon. Our team is proposing new tax saving strategies for small business economic development. I'm Karen Barber. I own the Barber Group, a surety bonding agency in Carroll County. On our team is Cara DePietro, owner of HMC Incorporated, a manufacturing firm in Howard County, and Zion Lopez, a student at Baltimore County Community College. Prior to COVID, Maryland had over 594,000 small business firms. A small percentage of these firms had little to no FF&E, furniture, fixture, and equipment. Of these 594,000 firms, over half are engaged in offering services in such as financial and insurance, educational, healthcare, and social assistance and administrative support. And roughly $487,000 of these firms are non-employer firms. Every year, the state of Maryland requires businesses to submit their personal property tax form and pay a $300 filing fee, regardless if the business owns any FF&E. And so therefore, we propose that this fee be waived for 2 years for all small businesses owning no FF&E or owing no personal property tax. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. Of the 594,000 small business firms in Maryland pre-COVID, just over 150,000 firms are subject to sales tax. Eliminating any sales tax for small business retailers and those in construction, for example, would have little impact to the state's budget. Small retail shops prior to COVID had an average daily sales revenue of only $1,108, consisting of 12 transactions and $91.70 in ticket sales on average. Eliminating sales tax for 2 years for such firms will drive consumers to buy more from small businesses. Next slide, please. Since the passing of an increased tax for business in 2007, the Maryland legislature has not favorably considered a company business tax reduction, which currently stands at 8.25%. However, the legislation that was proposed in prior years to reduce the tax rate was to be applied to all businesses in Maryland if passed. For COVID recovery, we are proposing reduction to 3% for small businesses only and for a period of just 2 years. Out of those 594,000 firms existing prior to COVID, it is far-reaching to think that all reported a taxable profit. The few firms during COVID and for the next 2 years that show profit should receive a relief, using those tax savings to rebuild their infrastructure and cash flow. With Virginia's tax rate at 6%, we may see an increase in the number of new small businesses establishing their operations in Maryland. With Maryland opening their doors to small business, it will not only stimulate organic growth, but capture growth from outside the state too. Next slide. Few of the 594,000 small businesses own their building and typically rent space. For those that do own their own office space, condo or building, IRS requires that such property be depreciated. When the space or building is sold, the seller must recapture that depreciation as income at a 25% tax rate for IRS. Maryland, however, requires you to pay as well an ordinary income tax on all your earnings, including depreciation recapture. We propose that Maryland waive the depreciation income recapture for 2 years for small businesses. The amount of money saved from this tax exclusion can be used as a down payment for new property or be used to enhance the cash flow of the small business, especially those looking to hire new employees. Next slide. In sum, using pre-COVID numbers, roughly 250,000 small firms would be exempted of the fee and would create $75 million in lost fee-driven revenue to the state. Closures due to COVID, however, are significant, and many of these firms, these 250,000 firms, could be shut down by now, unable to pay any fee. The data is just not available. Reducing the tax rate to 3% for small businesses may generate little impact to the state due to COVID shutdowns. Small businesses pay tax on the cash basis and will most likely show no to little taxable income for the next 2 years. For the few small businesses that own their own office space or building, they may need to sell this property to generate income to sustain their business, let alone their own household, due to COVID shutdowns. Eliminating this income tax on depreciation recapture would yield them better sustainability. It is plausible that COVID shutdowns have significantly decreased the number of retailers and other companies subject to sales tax. If we assume that half the retailers are shut down in Maryland, the lost revenue to the state could be as much as $900 million. However, this number could be highly exaggerated because we just don't have the data. What the state would lose in sales tax, however, it could gain in income tax, as the sales tax exemption could drive more consumers to purchase goods from small business retailers. In performing a deep data dive, the most current information we could find was from 3 credible sources with dates ranging from 2015 to 2018, and they are all referenced within this presentation. Thank you.
Karen, thank you so much. That was perfect. Exactly 5 minutes.
I've been practicing.
Can I ask that we stop sharing the screen and that our expert panelists come on to ask questions? And I believe our first question comes from Kaylee Locklear.
Hi, everybody. Erin, that was a great presentation and definitely some things that we're hearing from smaller businesses. So I just wanted to clarify 2 areas in your presentation, and there was some data that was being used. So my first question is, what was exactly the definition of small business that was being used? Were you looking at the amount of employees or perhaps the revenue size of a business? I think that would be really important for us to understand. And then my second question would be, again, waiving these filing fees is something that comes up all the time. If it's already been paid, is there an interest in having a conversation about retroactive reimbursement then from the beginning of when businesses were shut down? So those are my 2 questions. Thanks.
Okay, so on my presentation or on our presentation, there are hyperlinks to the resources that we used. So you can press on that and you can see that we use the SBA's data for Maryland concerning any small business definition. And I use their numbers. They came up with, their last numbers for small business go back to 2018, 2017. So there's nothing for 2019 and nothing for 2020. So back then there was 594,000 small business firms by their definition, encompassing all industry segments that they have listed. And as far as the fee, we're proposing to start December 31st, 2020, and go to 2022. So you wouldn't have to worry about retroactively going back and reimbursing.
Excellent. I think our next question comes from Don Fry.
And again, thank you very much. It was a great presentation, and I had some of the same concerns that Kaylee had with respect to the size. The definition of small business is always very important to know. A lot of the times the personal property taxes themselves, although assessed at the state level, are paid to local government. You're looking to waive the filing fee. What about the actual taxes itself? Are you looking to have those waived? And if so, have you talked to any local government entities about that situation?
No, we're just talking about the fee itself. I mean, I personally have an insurance surety agency. I don't own any personal property and I have to pay the fee. And there's many, I mean, there are a lot of, there's about 150,000 small business firms that are like mine, service industry and, healthcare. They still have to send in that form and pay $300 regardless if they owe any tax. So for those who don't owe tax and for those who don't have personal property, I feel like you can send in your form without paying a fee. Why pay a fee?
Thank you.
Thank you again. Okay, we're moving fast and furious. Senator Doug Peters has a question, and then I'm going to, I guess that's going to be the last one for this round. We're going to move on to our next pitch. Senator Peters.
Thank you, Katie. Senator Rosepep is on the line. And we put a bill together, I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, where the filing fee would be waived if the company could show that they had a retirement plan in place, or if they were willing to start a retirement plan in place. So that bill was passed, and generally we funded it every year. I know with the budget cuts, we've had to remove some of that money, but that was a creative way, I thought, of making businesses think about their employees with retirement plans and also waiving the fee. So I just thought I'd give you a little history on that.
That's awesome. Unfortunately, and I think that's a great idea, but I know personally that a lot, because I deal with the construction trades, a lot of them had to go into their IRA and cancel them because of COVID. So that trigger is not going to be there for many people.
All it requires is for you to set the program up.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, good to know.
Thank you very much. Apparently we do have one more question, and I'd like to turn it over to Margaret Wood.
Hi, have you considered in your small business definition to only apply to those impacted via the pandemic and put that in as a justification in order to get the filing fee waived versus all small businesses?
Hi, Margaret. And I just have to tell you, she won our DW Distinguished Women's Award for the Girl Scouts this year. So right on, Margaret. But no, because I think that would be very difficult to police. And I think, it's a very simple thing. If you don't own property and you don't owe the tax, then you don't pay the fee. And it's a very thing, and it's only for 2 years. We're not asking you to take this in perpetuity. And if it's doing well for small business and COVID is going to impact us more than 2 years, then, don't sunset that provision, let it go, just do it at 2-year increments until you see some better sustainability in the small business world.
Thank you. And Bob Orr, you have the final question.
Thank you very much, Karen, for a great presentation. Just one question about the reduction in the business tax from 8.25 to 3%. It seems to me like that's really in a different category than the other pieces of your package. And if I heard you right, you said that you thought because of lockdowns that the state would not be heavily affected by this in terms of revenue generation. But if it really would not significantly affect revenue generation, it's probably also not going to do much good for the businesses. So could you drill in on that one, on your calculation of how much of a reduction in state revenue and how much benefit to the businesses you would expect from this part of the package?
Sure, we tried to run those numbers, but without data for 2020, I have no idea what kind of income was reported from small businesses in 2019 and what they're going to show for 2020. So I know that from the SBA information that the average incorporated business owner makes about $52,000 in income. Now, I don't know what they make in business income. That was their ordinary income. So I tried to find numbers on adjusted gross income, but couldn't find it. So my thought process was to have the state do it. Tax, what do you call it, a committee to find out from the comptroller's office that data, because it's just not public right now. But my idea of that is that the state's going to say, oh my gosh, we're going to lose so much tax revenue, but theoretically you're not, because if the small business reports income on a cash basis, most likely I would say majority of them are going to show a loss or try to. And those that do, I think, hey, hooray for them, but don't penalize them this year or next year. Try to reduce that rate down as low as we can. And because of the amount of income that'll most likely be so small, the state could go down to 3% and not suffer any harm, but it would mean so much. So like, let's say a company earned $50,000 in revenue, the business did. I mean, they would pay $4,500 in tax versus $1,500. That delta is significant to that business owner, but it's not going to be that impactful to the state. And so that was the idea there. And it would be an easy bill to get passed because it wouldn't have such a huge impact.
Karen, thank you so much for your presentation. I know it's always hard to go first, and you did a great job. I'm going to keep us moving along because we've got 7 more of these to go, okay?
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. So next up under our economic ecosystem group here is, I just lost my, is Lisa Creason with the Small Business Ecosystem Policy Group. So Lisa, you are on deck.
Okay, thank you very much. The Maryland Small Business Ecosystem Policy Group was comprised of business owners, SBDC employees, and employees and faculty of the University of Maryland. Next slide, please. COVID-19 fears continue to reduce small businesses' cash flow and impact their workforces. Small businesses are struggling under the strain of decreased revenue, which confounds their efforts to retain skilled workers. Employers with diminished revenue might reduce employee hours or compensation. Workers may lose their footing as unemployment benefits end without any opportunities to have learned new skills or advance. Maryland's work sharing program could help more unemployed workers and provide small business with workforce flexibility by expanding its program. Sorry, I'm getting messages. By expanding its program's eligibility to any unemployed or underemployed worker that would otherwise be on unemployment. Work sharing also mitigates Maryland's unemployment costs. Next slide, please. Small businesses often lack sufficient funds to retain experts in specialized fields such as legal, accounting,
technology, or marketing. A database could be created and managed by UMD's Quest. Then businesses that are registered with the state of Maryland would be invited to opt in and create a profile sharing their capabilities. Then any business that provides technical assistance and capacity building, education and youth services, or job and self-sufficiency training at no charge are eligible to apply for tax credits equal to 50% of the value of the money, goods, or real property contribution through the existing DHCD tax credit program, Give Maryland. These tax credits can encourage businesses growing businesses, developing partnerships, and developing student job skills opportunities. Next slide, please. Our research led us to past or existing programs that could be expanded on or copied. As already mentioned, the expansion of the Maryland's work sharing program, allowing employers to hire any workers that would otherwise be collecting unemployment from home. The compensation for these positions would be a combination of the partial continuance of state unemployment checks, with the employer funding the gap between the reasonable pay and the unemployment check. A program like SHA's BDAP program would improve a business's internal processes and systems for increased business efficiency, competitiveness, stronger capacity, and sustainability. Small businesses in the private sector could benefit from a networked program like SBA's Mentor Protege program, creating an opt-in database of businesses and their capabilities would elevate a small business's chance of getting work from other businesses for sustainability. Next slide, please. The work sharing program benefits the state by reducing the full freight of unemployment, with an employer offering a paycheck for partial unemployment. From the employer's perspective, it reduces administrative costs of layoffs, furloughs, rehires, recruiting, and training, although there is additional administrative requirement of regular reporting. From the employee's perspective, this security of job and paycheck can be morale boosting. Our research indicates that the Division of Unemployment Insurance available funds are $441 million. There are currently 230,000 individuals on unemployment benefits in Maryland, each averaging $332 per week, for a total of $76 million. Reducing this by just 20% is a savings of $15 million per week. The costs of the BDAP program were funded by a federal grant of $550,000. Approximately 60 small businesses were helped during the 2-year program. It was administered by the SBDC, and participating businesses had access to business consulting, guidance, education, professional services from other businesses, software, and other tools. Our team proposes a 1-year program with a grant of $225,000 to mirror the BDAP program. In all, our proposal relies on the existing Maryland work sharing program, expanding the definition of eligible hires, and stands to save the state money, optimistically $15 million per week, plus an existing tax credit program, Give Maryland, the creation of a business networking database at no cost, and a reinvention of the Business Development Accelerator Program, or BDAP program, for private industry, estimated at $225,000 to assist 30 businesses the first year, including an outreach component to make businesses aware of these programs, as it has become evident that the existence of these programs needs to be advertised. Our proposal emphasizes existing programs that with slight adjustments could assist businesses to survive COVID-19, improve operations, and develop mutually beneficial networks. Our team believes that this proposal could bridge the talent and diversity gaps, ignite a new paradigm to develop untapped talent, and strengthen the ecosystem statewide. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. That was awesome. I timed you and it was like exactly 4 minutes and 49 seconds. That's great. So now I'd like to invite our expert review panel to come back and ask a few questions. And once again, if we can focus on kind of short questions and short answers, that will give us exactly 5 minutes. Thank you. Who's got the first question? Is anybody talking? Yes, Bob, thank you.
if while we're waiting here, Lisa, Bob, or here, I just wanted to see if you could unpack your calculation that that the 1-year program that mirrors BDAP would save the state 15 million per week. Can you just unpack that for me? I'm trying to understand where that the volume of savings comes from.
Oh, okay, no, that was a crossover. So the Maryland work sharing program, when we did the calculations of what it's currently costing, our calculation was based on by expanding the eligibility. So let me just say this. My understanding of work sharing program right now is that the employee that benefits from it must be an existing employee. So what we suggested is that we open it up and say that an employer can hire anyone and benefit from the work sharing program. And so that was where the $15 million came from.
Great, thank you.
The BDAP would cost money. So
thank you. I was confused, and that clarifies it. Thank you.
I talked fast.
Thank you, Lisa. And our next question goes to Dr. Wu. But I want to thank you for picking up on the work share program. It's something that Senator Rosapap and I have worked on. And I believe that rehiring a person directly onto workshare is currently covered under the FAQs, but I can follow up with you offline. Dr. Wu.
Thank you, Senator. Lisa, I had a question for you. Thank you for the presentation. Certainly trying to help support displaced workers is critical for us to get to the other side of this crisis. And for workforce development programs to really succeed, we really need to have a federal, state, and local partnership. And I know within the limited confines of your presentation, you talked mostly about the federal, but can you explain how we're going to have the localities participate in this, especially since they're going to be on the front lines of trying to help these workers get to new jobs?
You may see, we actually were looking at this as state programs. And so maybe the confusion thinking that it was pointed at federal is because we are borrowing from programs that the federal government had championed in the past, but we were looking at these to be copycats, but state within the state, not federally funded for this. Does that make sense? Did I answer the question?
What about the role of localities and their workforce development programs and work source programs?
I may not know the answer to that. I'm sorry, a little bit more technical than I'm familiar with the unemployment part of it.
We can answer some of these questions, offline. One of the things I want to do is to connect our presenters to the various, experts on the phone. So we can talk that one offline. That was a great presentation, Lisa. Thank you so much for stepping up.
Thank you.
We have one more presentation in this ecosystem category, and that is the Small Business Pandemic Response Ecosystem Policy Group. And the speaker is Mehul Shah. And I just wanted to remind people that it's totally fine to keep your video on while you're doing the presentation. And also that we are streaming this live on my Facebook page, and it's been shared to a couple others, and that is Katie Fry Hester, MD9. Mehul, if you're there, you're ready to start anytime.
Great, thank you so much. Sorry for the background color as well. So we are the MD Small Business Pandemic Response Ecosystem Policy PrEP group. And our goal is to strengthen our economy safely and securely. The team is listed below. I'll dive right in. So before I start my presentation, if I can kindly ask everybody 2 quick questions as a survey, and you can just send as a message your response. First question is, if anyone over here has been contacted over phone by a COVID tracer, if you can just say A, yes or no. And second question is, if anybody has a guesstimate, not a complete detailed breakdown of the numbers, but even a guesstimate, how long will this last and how much money will needed to be provided for small businesses to thrive? Just a yes, no for part B. So I'll dive into our presentation. What we are proposing is a policy for retail businesses to practice safekeeping. Yes, they are doing it, but still as a policy coming in, it'll be much better. And also a use of a digital safe pass system. Now, we truly believe this is the future. This will be the norm. And we think we are currently now at a position that we should adopt and accommodate that. We could be the first trendsetter county, association, or a state to engage businesses to revive and thrive. And this benefits listed on the slide can be realized to everyone. Imagine we go out to eat. There is one scary thing for all of us, the unknown, if the place is safe. That with this solution, we will curb and will reduce the overall impact. And as I said, this is the ecosystem. It's a self-sustaining, scalable model, means customer gets incentives to use the system. Small businesses gets more revenues. Healthcare providers can connect to users if they have certain symptoms, as well as the state and federal health department can detect red zones. And most importantly, at no additional cost, we provide unparalleled value. Next slide, please. So I'll quickly dive into the problem statement. As I discussed, we are trying to implement a policy that will address retail businesses' real long-term problems, and that will improve customer confidence, spending, and health, also building a self-sustaining framework. The images I have, I'm going to just focus on the right image. What we really need is an end-to-end solution that can boost and support the economy and have an ecosystem that engages all the stakeholders at the right levels and have some sort of regulated playbook. My first question, if anybody has been contacted by any tracers, it's because on the bottom right, those are some of the methods that are being used now. Unprecedented amount of money spent by all the states for COVID tracers to call everybody, but at least from whoever I have surveyed, I have not even met one person saying, yes, I got the call. So we are not sure where that money is being truly spent on tracers versus that should have gone to support small businesses. On the bottom right, what we are trying to highlight, the way we are trying to improve this solution is by engaging the end users. We will give them incentives so we can get continuum of care. Next slide, please. So here's the system. Long story short, current scenario on the top sliver, if we go out to eat, somebody gets infected and there is exponential growth. Versus if somebody turns into red, we can connect them to stakeholders, the tactical lines such as doctors, physicians, pharmacy, labs, as well as the state and health federal departments, state departments. They can see red zones that they can detect. Here I'm just flashing, for example, if I go into a restaurant or I'm a worker, I just show this screen, I'm green, and at least we are curbing and preventing the spread. Next slide, please. Now, here are the benefits. I will just highlight some key benefits for users. They get incentivized. They can get notification. They can prevent going into red zone. For local businesses, free marketing, increased revenues. We can give partnerships for supply chain as well as support on the state and federal aid areas. And on the right for healthcare team and providers. Next slide, please. I'm looking at the time as well. So this is the summary. MVP is ready. No cost needed, and a lot of predictability, forecasting that will be really give value, health, as well as monetary customer to support, as well as businesses. I'll take questions and I'm going to look at the responses. If I have any yes, I will reach back to you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much. You finished with 18 seconds left to go. Who would like to ask the first question about this really interesting idea? I know Senator Rosapep would ask. Are you there, Senator Rosapep?
I'm glad to point out maybe two issues that are going to come up, and I know there's a couple senators on this call that are going to appreciate what I'm going to say. Have you had conversations, and I saw the self evaluation, there's obviously individuals who are asymptomatic. So kind of thought through that portion of that technology. But via the technology itself, obviously there are HIPAA concerns, data security concerns, privacy concerns. How have you all addressed that? I would just be kind of curious.
Great question, and thank you. So I'm a pharmacist by training, and my experience is all in healthcare and IT. So we address all the HIPAA questions, no health related information. And then if I just quickly show, even when I show the map, it will just show me users near me using this app as a dot. No PII information is shared. And the security we are taking care of is we only take data for 21 days. That is T minus 4 days and T plus 17 days. After that, we purge and delete the data. So for example, if you're using the app, you will be assigned a new ID. We are not sharing any PII information to everyone. Talking to some of the hotel owners, restaurant folks, even if their staff use it, imagine this, we would have all sat at happy hour and discussing this. And if you know two businesses, one is green versus one is unknown, at least our perception would be they are doing safe, we would like to go there. And that will also improve for others to get out, be confident, and increase the spending.
Thank you very much. I also think we have a question from Dean Orr.
Thank you, Mehul. That was a great presentation. And you did something that we always coach our students to do when they do a pitch competition, and that is get the audience involved. So kudos to you for polling us up front. That said, I was a little nervous when you made the trade-off between contact tracing and how expensive it is and this technological solution. I don't think we're really in an either or situation. I honestly believe contact tracing does work and is needed. So I would only caution that I would provide this as an additional layer of defense, not an alternate layer of defense.
Yep.
My question is really about the technology itself. We have so many technologies on offer right now. What's your argument for why this is the right technological platform?
Thank you so much. So over 60%, and you may all have heard the news, Virginia has one app, DC is just partnering, launching with Apple and Google so they can do tracing. So first answer is we have decoupled the tracing. All we are doing is a simple question. Are you feeling okay? Do you want to talk to a doctor? No, okay, you're green. Because nobody should feel stigmatized if they turn into red, number one. And second is because Google and Apple, everybody's skeptical that, hey, they might be tracing, tracking, sharing data. 60% of the users, they said, no, they will not share data. That's why we want to keep this very simple. And the dynamics we have shifted, rather than coming top down from federal, we are saying this is bottom up, where businesses, small businesses will use this, their staff using it. So all we are saying is by you giving incentives and discounts, the end user consumers, they come in. Consumers don't have to use it. They will not be asked, but this will just spread the word. And that's why the businesses is the angle we are using. And technology, we have decoupled and not including tracing. Unless and until if you opt out, then you won't. If you opt in, then yes, we will give some basic level of notification. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. We have just over a minute left, and our last question will come from Margaret Wood.
You mentioned in Baltimore, I think you said Baltimore, there will be limited cost or no cost. Have you addressed the cost factors outside of that area to small businesses that can't afford to implement anything with the cost model?
Yes. So there is absolutely, no, of course, for state of Maryland, no cost at all forever. It is self-funded. But for other businesses, never any cost. For end users, never any cost. Where the money revenue piece would be if other states want to implement it, if they want to customize it, or if they want some special reporting and everything. That's the only area where there might be some cost model, or if certain businesses want to advertise. But it will always be free for small businesses as well as end users to use and leverage this.
Thank you so much.
And if I may, sorry, just there's one big question on the chat for security. All this is protected. No PII information is ever shared. So even if the best case you get a notification or you see on the map, you will see a green or red dot. You would not know who that person is unless you are on a 10-mile field and there is only 2 people, then you will know who that person is. But other than that, no information is shared.
Thank you very much. And that was the timer. Appreciate it. Okay, so now we're moving right along to, oh, sorry, it's my other phone. Moving right along to Stephen Colella, who has worked with the Nonprofit Support Initiatives Group. And once again, we know that nonprofits aren't businesses, but they are employers. And so we've got one presentation on how we can help them. Over to you, Stephen.
Great, thank you so much. And actually, I really appreciate that introduction because it ties directly into the first point that our team would like to bring forward. And that is the suggestion that we resolve to increase awareness of nonprofit support and resource programs. Essential services to creating nonprofits through both foundation and through successful operation need to be cataloged and made readily available. Similar to small business support services that are often broadcast through at all levels of government, from local economic development agencies to the State Department of Commerce, all the way up to the Small Business Administration and federal agencies. So services including nonprofit startup and counseling, legal and organizational assistance, training and technical assistance, and as well as tax credits and state funding are all critical to the success of a startup nonprofit. And we need to make sure that we have resources to support those areas. Developing and making public this nonprofit resource directory would provide clear and concise information to founders and operators on what help is available, and centralizing the develop and maintenance of this directory, possibly under the Department of Commerce, would go a long way. Finally, it allows us to identify shortfalls in nonprofit resources and work together to fill them. Next slide, please. Second, to Senator Hester's point, we should conduct a quantitative analysis of nonprofit economic impact statewide. We need to collect, review, and publicize valuable nonprofit economic impact data, which would include quantifying the tangible values where community services, such as the cost of private versus public implementation, employment, as well as commercial and non-income and sales taxes would come into play and would be generated by our nonprofits throughout the state. In order to do this, we can partner with existing public and private entities that conduct similar research, such as the organizations listed here. And we can also formally recognize that nonprofits, although they are not small businesses, are a vital component of a healthy Maryland economy. Next slide. Third, we'd like to recommend an expansion of eligibility criteria and thresholds for nonprofit support programs and initiatives. This would include things like relaxing or waiving requirements for 501c3 status for certain nonprofit support initiatives, to include organizations without status, but that are organized on a not-for-profit basis. This would also include redeveloping the eligibility language of this programming to account for fiscal sponsor relationships, which account for subsidiary organizations based out of larger fiscal sponsors or fiscal agents, such as community foundations and foundations located at institutions of higher education. And finally, we'd also like to recommend a differentiation between faith-based organization and houses of worship. We feel that this plays an important component in the difference between the tax liability faced by houses of worship and community service organizations with a faith-based mission. Next slide, please. Identifying nonprofits that are heavily impacted during times of crisis and directing additional support to them. maintaining a catalog of vital nonprofit organizations that are likely to be heavily impacted by economic disruption, such as nonprofits that are major employers facing fundraising shortfalls due to reduced giving, nonprofits with small operating budgets that also provide essential services, and nonprofits that are funded primarily or substantially by municipal, county, state, or federal funding. And finally, also offering alternative methods of calculating award ceilings for grant programs when limited by operating budget, such as the Maryland Nonprofit Recovery Initiative, for organizations with non-traditional operations and or high volumes of in-kind contribution. Next slide, please. And lastly, we want to recommend potential expansion of programs such as the Community Investment Tax Credit or the creation of a similar program. We'd recommend allocating additional funding to the Community Investment Tax Credit and similar tax credit programs to leverage private dollars to provide immediate funding to nonprofits. This provides nonprofit organizations with tax credit incentives to encourage maintenance of and or increase current donations, while also opening the door for new donations. It also allows the state to leverage private cash on an immediate basis to support nonprofits while deferring expenditures for the state. We would also recommend to allow for an emergency round of tax credit allocations by competitive and or need-based application.
Thank you, Stephen. That was awesome. Really appreciate it. I think we have one question right off the bat from Senator Cheryl Kagan, also our Vice Chair of EHE. Cheryl.
Thank you, Senator Hester. Stephen, congratulations. Thank you for being a nonprofit voice here. From the very beginning, under Senator Hester's leadership, this Bipartisan Small Business Caucus has included nonprofits as part of its agenda and priorities. So your being here just fits with that. And I really want to thank you and thank my colleagues for that kind of support. The one piece that I'd love to talk more about, and maybe offline, but if you've got more data, I know Maryland Nonprofits is pulling this together. When people think about fundraising challenges during coronavirus in the nonprofit sector, they primarily are thinking about food pantries that are just getting deluged with folks who have never needed food before. They're thinking about homeless shelter if we start coming up with evictions, battered women's shelter because of the rise in domestic violence. What they're not thinking about is everything else. The arts organizations that can't produce a play or sell tickets or present concerts. I talked to our mental health organization, Every Mind, last night. Their demand is up 30%. I mean, it's hitting everyone. And as business owners and everyone are either losing jobs or worried about losing jobs or losing income, revenues are down. People are not making the same size donations. And so I don't know if you want to expand or expound on that anymore, whether you've got any access to data or whether that's a conversation you and I should have offline. But that was a really important part of your presentation. So thank you for including it. And again, if you have additional comments or we can collaborate down the road. Thank you, Hester.
Absolutely. If I can just take a brief moment to respond. So you're absolutely right that some of those, standard operating procedures that nonprofits follow in order to generate their annual operating budgets have been really disastrously impacted by the pandemic in the same way that small business revenues have. I think this is actually one of the more unfortunate similarities between nonprofits and small businesses, that it's really it's challenging to evaluate and estimate the potential fiscal impact that the pandemic is having on these organizations when it's still ongoing. So that is why, one of the things that you mentioned is that giving may very well be down as philanthropic businesses and individuals are also negatively impacted by the pandemic. And that is where especially a program like the Community Investment Tax Credit represents an excellent opportunity to ensure stability in those giving opportunities. For those that aren't familiar with the Community Investment Tax Credit, and the net cost of a contribution through the Community Investment Tax Credit can be as low as 27 cents on the dollar. And so an individual or a business that donates $10,000 in deductible funds to an organization can in turn recoup $7,300 of that contribution while giving the full $10,000 to the organization itself. So it really, it allows us to leverage those private dollars to tackle some of those revenue shortfalls, which, I think does a lot to help sustain those nonprofits while some of the other data that you're referring to remains uncertain.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kagan. Thank you, Stephen. I think we have time for one more quick question. President Wu, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Senator Hester. First, let me acknowledge Senator Kagan as one of the biggest champions of nonprofits in the state. And Senator Kagan also knows, since she's from Montgomery County, that I believe in Montgomery County, we have more nonprofits than any other jurisdiction in the state. And they are a very significant employer. And so nonprofits play a critical role in our economy. I think that Stephen is undisputed. I only have an observation that you seem to engage the Department of Commerce in some of these activities. And for the Department of Commerce, having just come from the department, there is a bit of an awkwardness because the department focuses on for-profit companies. And some of these incentives, the corollaries aren't quite exact. Also, a number of nonprofits don't want to be considered a for-profit business. They want that distinction to be very clear. And so it's just something to consider as you think about how to employ this, because I think Commerce has a role, but some of the direct correlations and connections with nonprofits and for-profit businesses are a little awkward, especially for the nonprofits to accept.
Thank you very much. Well said. We are now moving on. Of course, my dog would bark at this exact moment. We're now moving on to women and minority-owned businesses. And we have up first, Kelsey Stewart, who will be presenting. And she has a couple people, Albie Shane Felter, I hope I said that okay, and Craig Panos will also join for questions. So over to you.
Hello. First, thank you to all who organized and participated in this hackathon. This presentation will outline our team's recommendations. The Women and Minority-Owned Business team is comprised of our advisor, John Deary, a student from the University of Maryland, Samantha Chu, and MDSBDC staff members, Ruth Chavez, Jennifer Hart, Craig Panos, and myself, Kelsey Stewart. In 2012, Maryland recognized 531,953 businesses with 414,238 or 78% of those being owned by minorities and women. Even though women and minority-owned businesses make up a substantial part of Maryland's businesses, they encounter a number of significant, unique barriers that other businesses do not. This evidence supports the idea that the health of small women and minority-owned businesses could greatly impact the overall business economy what could be considered a small business state. So the question is, how can the state of Maryland effectively support women and minority-owned businesses? Next slide, please. What we gathered from the team members who work with or own these businesses is that there are persistent issues that relate to the limited access to capital these businesses have, but also issues that have resulted from oversight, negligence, and the withholding of information and assistance. The following issues compound upon one another and impact different aspects of one's business. Lack of visibility of these businesses make it difficult to find and support their peers and potential customers, which also contributes to the limited access to mentorship of these businesses that exaggerates the barriers to entry and transmission of information regarding resources and adequate support. These two problems are furthered by the lack of centralization and promotion of the sources available to minority and women-owned businesses throughout the state. When these resources are not promoted or easily located, chronic failure of state agencies to meet minority and small business contract participation goals occur. All of these barriers uphold one of the largest issues, that is scarce capital for the state's minority and women-owned businesses. Next slide, please. Small businesses' importance to the state and national economy is well documented, as well as the disproportionate amount of obstacles they encounter. Amid the global pandemic, these problems have been allowed to persist, and the lack of support is evident in the financial assistance programs that have been released in the last few months. An overwhelming majority of recipients of under $150,000 in PPP loans identified as white. This is astounding when compared to the substantial portion of businesses that are owned by racial minorities. These disparities are strongly correlated to the lack of knowledge and promotion of available resources. This was demonstrated earlier this year when the COVID-19 Emergency Relief Fund from the Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority had funding allocated to the COVID-19 Emergency Relief Loan Fund in June 2020. But when they began processing applications under this new program in July 2020, they received $20 million in requests for assistance within the first 7 weeks of the funding period. When people are made aware of the opportunities and provided with constant updates and comprehensive application assistance, it is made apparent that those who need the resources will do what is necessary, provided they have adequate knowledge, access, and support. Next slide, please. After an analysis of the existing issues, the task force recommends the following with their costs listed beside them. Creation of an online directory of Maryland women and minority-owned businesses for the purpose of facilitating communication and support between these businesses, increasing visibility for organizations who support these businesses, enabling establishment of a mentor-mentee opt-in program for easy identification of new and established businesses to facilitate support by business incubators and other mentoring organizations. The revival of the SACF grant program, which provides for up to $2,000 in professional services support per business. Grant funds go to reduced fee professional services firms to assist the small businesses with building online capabilities, accounting, legal issues, and business operations. Online publication of a user-friendly comprehensive directory, state programs, and agency support to women and minority-owned businesses. Strict enforcement of the 63 state agencies of minority-owned business contract participation goals and the 70 agencies with small business reserve program goals with stronger consequences for failure to reach annual contracting goals. Establish formal channels between the Office of Small Minority and Women Business Affairs and private trade associations and other business groups representing the interests of women and minority-owned businesses. Next slide, please. Using the SBA's definition of fewer than 500 employees, there are 477,000 small businesses in Maryland. If our program can impact 47,700 or 10% of the state's small businesses by helping them produce an average increase of $1,000 to the state in taxes and fees, then the state will receive a $47 million in revenue, making that $400,000 cost equate to 118-to-1 return on the state's investment. The reality is this: if these businesses are well patronized, it will lead to a boost in the economic development of the state. Providing connections and networks increases visibility, which is a low-cost solution to minority and women-owned businesses that have to do the legwork against larger businesses in areas such as marketing and networking. Thank you for providing the opportunity to work with an amazing team on a persistent issue and for your time and consideration today.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. That was a great summary of both the problems and some solutions. Before I start the timer, I just wanted to say that there's actually a group in Portland who's developed this database for companies selling to companies and also to the state government. And so I'd like to, if you connect with my office, I'll connect you to them after this.
Awesome,
Do we have any questions for this team?
This is Rhonda. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Hi, Kelsey, fantastic presentation. And I have to tell you that the questions and issues you raised have been the ones I've been facing the nearly 25 years I've worked with the Department of Commerce. And I think now is the time that we really try to move the needle on getting information out to our small and minority-owned businesses. And when everyone's talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we start to need to put some action behind all the words. I had a couple of questions for you. Can you tell me what the SACF grant program is?
Yeah, hi, this is Craig. I work with Kelsey. That's a strategic assistance consulting fund. And it's
my gosh, is that a program that we used to have at Commerce where we provided grants?
It's been retired for several years now. It's a $2,000 grant, and it addresses the deep needs of small businesses to compete now, to compete online. Right now, they're getting crushed by larger business, but they could compete a lot more easily if they had an online presence, and it's not hard to do.
And question for you, I think, what was the dollar amount associated with that $400,000?
Well, that would help 200 businesses, I mean, as a
Okay,
pilot
that was gonna be
program,
my
but
next
that
question.
would pay for itself in the sales tax that a minimum wage hire would pay in a year. I mean, this is a no-brainer. It's a very high ROI effort.
And one other question I had about either an online portal for information or online resource book for all the resources that are out there. I think one of the questions that always comes up, because I've heard about portals that we should have for technology assistance for entrepreneurs and connecting techies. How do you keep that information fresh? Who's responsible for maintaining that data? And I think that's one of the challenges that always comes up when you talk about these online resources. Someone's got to own it.
We recommended using existing state IT staff to set it up and run it.
Did you have a particular agency in mind that would be on the hook for that?
I think in our discussions, we had spoke or tossed around ideas of businesses that already collect information of businesses. So we could almost petition to give or to collect a little more information that would be opt-in as well. So businesses could opt in and give their information as far as if they're minority and women owned. So in the databases where you're able to find or connect with funding and things like that, it could be centralized in something that already exists. So the information would in essence update itself, given the business's incentive of wanting to be recognized. So
it's a good point. Because I know the MBE directory, which you can get online, doesn't capture every minority-owned business because you're only in that directory if you feel it's to your benefit to become certified and actually bid on government contracts. But there are a whole host of minority businesses that don't fall in those categories.
That was exactly what we're trying to address here.
Yeah, capturing.
And the reluctance to come forward and list on a directory. But if businesses felt like they could help each other and contact each other and support each other, they would be much more willing to, we felt, to be on a directory. Is that right, Kelsey?
Yes, I think the biggest thing here is that what we identified is that though money is, of course, a really big help, at the time, if that's not something that is able to be done, we have to address it. We have to address the smaller things that could change, make a lot of changes. So in order to just have some type of visibility in a way where minority and women-owned businesses can see each other and their potential clients can see them and find them in some way, that is an incentive on its own. I understand that there are probably a lot of other barriers that have to be overcome as far as businesses who may not want to give that identifying information, but we would just also have to have that written into a policy where that information is private and can't be used for other motives or anything of that nature. And that's only to the benefit of the businesses to, like I said, find their peers and connect with their potential clients and customers.
Once the word gets out, the business owners won't feel as isolated and alone and lacking resources as they might.
Greg and Kelsey, I'll connect you to Rhonda offline so you can continue this conversation. I just wanted to give a quick moment to Alan Gutierrez. We've got kind of negative 30 seconds, Alan, but I want you to get your question in.
All right. I can't turn it into a positive. 30 seconds. Two quick things. Thank you much, Kelsey and Craig. Obviously, little self-interest here on potentially using the women business centers in the state of Maryland. I just expanded 2 new women business centers, and first time in a long time in Maryland. One with Morgan State, which is an HBCU that's never been done before. So I wanted to highlight that, and I opened one also in the East Shore. So now there's 3 women business centers in the state of Maryland. I'm going to give you a heads up on that. And obviously the sponsor and great supporter, SBDCs, certainly I think there's an avenue there for opportunity in your presentation in terms of getting, because they are performance and tasks on different areas that could be help and assistance for you guys. The only thing I was just curious about is the PPP, those numbers that you got on the slide. Were those numbers related to that you got off on the SBA.gov website?
Yes,
okay.
For Maryland, for the state of Maryland.
Okay, so and some of that, as you know, is all voluntary as well in that sense. So I just wanted to highlight that part.
Yeah, I think it also speaks to the fact that since it is voluntary, the uncomfortability of minority and women-owned business owners, or a lot of minorities, for even submitting that information is a part of the issue of feeling as though they aren't being as seen and as recognized. So I think that plays into it as well.
Yeah, but that's in statute as an FY, because I know we've done over $16 billion in the minority community in the PP loan. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that from that standpoint. But I think using the resource partners is something to consider in your presentation for especially the new women's centers that I just opened up.
We're looking forward to collaboration. And in closing, we did mention these programs we estimate would have 118 to 1 return on investment. This is not complicated decision to make. And also, we would also like to say that retiring the video lottery terminal funding has been a negative for the small businesses in the state.
Okay.
Thank you guys. I'm glad to connect with you offline.
Thank you so much again for this presentation. We have one more on women and minority-owned businesses. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Anthony Williams. Anthony, you are up next.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm with Meridian Management Group. I'm a senior vice president, and many of you may know our president, Stanley Tucker. And so next slide, please. We're just going to address the need for minority women-owned businesses who have been hit especially hard during this pandemic. MMG, Meridian Management Group, has been around since 1995 and is a privately held fund with expertise in investing in small minority women-owned businesses. We also manage the Maryland Small Business Development Financing Program for the Department of Commerce, and we are also one of the Video Lottery Terminal Fund managers. And you may not know, but we have helped the MSBIFA program become recognized as a national model for funding small and minority businesses. And even the Video Lottery Terminal Fund has been recognized has received a national award for its creativeness in providing funding to small minority women-owned businesses. And is one of the only programs of its type in the US. Next slide, please. We're going to constantly remind folks that capitalism without capital does not work. And the point here is that there's a consistent problem among small minority and women-owned businesses, and that is the lack of access to capital. As this problem has been extremely exacerbated as a result of COVID-19, and even funds that have currently been created to support these businesses, monies have recently been taken from those funds to support other programs. Next slide, please. So the research continues to support the fact that through national, regional, and local studies, that including the latest disparity study in Maryland, it just confirms that lack of access to the capital for minority-owned businesses is still a major problem. Recent studies show that minority communities are disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And more recent data that we have is Governor Hogan had allocated $5 million of the CARE Act funding to MSBIFA to assist small minority women-owned businesses. And in a short period of time, over 2 months, we received over 250 applications for that funding, requesting over $22 million from a $5 million fund. And the $5 million has been committed. It was committed within 2 months to 65 companies. Next slide, please. So we're proposing 3 things. The first is we think that the Video Lottery Terminal Fund, which allocates a portion of the slot revenues to fund small minority women-owned businesses, should be protected so that folks can stop going to that till and redirecting the monies for other purposes. And we propose that a legislative initiative be enacted in order to protect that source of funding. The second thing is that because of the experience we recently had with the COVID-19 recovery relief fund, we think that the state should provide capital to support what we're calling the COVID-19 recovery fund, because clearly there's not enough capital under the existing program to assist the many needs of the small and minority women-owned businesses that have requested assistance. And once again, for the $5 million fund, we had over 22 million in requests for that fund, and we're only able to support 69 or so businesses out of the 250 businesses that requested it during that time period. Further, there's going to be an ongoing need for assistance for this segment of the business community for the foreseeable future. So we need to continue to provide capital to support these businesses. And then finally, we are recommending that, similar to the Video Lottery Terminal Fund, recreational marijuana legislation is going to be enacted in the state soon, we foresee. And we think that that is another potential source of funding to support small minority women-owned businesses, similar to the VLT fund. So we're proposing that each licensed dispensary pay 2% of its annual gross sales into the existing fund account that is used by VLT to continue to help support small minority and women-owned businesses. Next slide. Okay, that's it.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Sorry, you are right on time. Are there any questions for Mr. Williams?
Hi, Rhonda.
Hello, Rhonda.
Hi, Anthony. How are you? Great presentation. And I am familiar with a lot of these issues, as Stanley and I have talked over the years about them. Question for you, with regard to protecting the 1.5% that is to go to the small minority women-owned business account from video lottery terminals, are you proposing something like a lockbox? Is that what you are proposing to avoid what happened in 2017 when funds were, the budget committees made a decision to divert the funding for 3 fiscal years to cover educational costs?
Yes, I don't know what the technical term for it is, but yes, essentially we're saying that the legislature should, put a freeze on and prevent others from coming and tapping into this fund, which receives an allocation on an annual basis. That whatever that allocation is, it should continue to be dedicated, devoted to the support of small minority women-owned businesses. And by doing so, it's going to have a positive economic impact, as we've been able to show over the past 5 years of the fund, of the 52 million that was allocated to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that ball is firmly in the court of our friends in the legislature and who are on this call.
Anthony, it's Don Fry. Let me ask you a question as well with respect to the COVID-19 Recovery Fund. You talked about funding through recreational marijuana, 2% of the annual sales. Is that how you would anticipate funding that COVID-19 Recovery Fund, or how would you propose funding that?
Well, we know that, funding, for the state is always an issue, and the state is always looking for other resources. So that is one resource that should be given consideration, whether it's COVID or whether it's just funding going forward. This would be an ongoing perpetual fund. So the need, and there could be some sunset, of course, in an assessment of future needs, but we know based on numerous studies now, including the state disparity study, that the need is ongoing. There needs to be alternative sources of funds identified to help support an allocation to these businesses.
So she would see maybe a COVID recovery fund that would have a sunset, so to speak, but then also an ongoing funding source through ultimate passage of recreational marijuana and the annual assessment, annual revenues from that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anthony, if I may as well. So this is Kaylee from the Retailers Association. I thought you did an excellent job in identifying, just like Don said, a potential funding source is huge with so much uncertainty about where revenue will be coming from for our state in the future. Have you thought at all about how this would be structured? So maybe creating, we know in the first 5 years, many businesses fail as it is. So thinking about some type of incentive down the road. So maybe it starts as some type of loan program and then a business surviving after those 5 years, perhaps it turns into some type of grant. And then I was also just trying to think about details around what exactly a business would be able to apply to the program for. So is it startup funding? Is it for equipment? Is it for actual infrastructure of their building or things of that nature? Or is it more operating costs? I just wanted some more details in there.
Right. Well, I think it would be similar to what we have currently been using the relief program for, which has been pretty broad. It's been for working capital. It's been for things related to adapting your business to the COVID environment, which is included the purchase of equipment, expanding the facility to accommodate more people, creating a safe environment. But it's also included, making payments on obligations that are owed as a result of the COVID situation. So it has been pretty open, and what we've done is the range of funding, at least under the current one, was from $25,000 to $100,000 to take in consideration the vast varying needs of the different businesses. And in terms of the structure, we did stability in the structure. We were dealing with that today with our non-COVID funds because we're still in the COVID environment, so we have to structure deals differently. So we were looking at a deal today where we were talking about how do we structure this deal to accommodate the needs of businesses, that knowing that COVID is not over yet. So we just have to be flexible in how we structure these deals and for repayment and structure them so that they can ultimately be recovered.
Thank you very much for that presentation and those great questions. We are right on time, everybody. We've had a bunch of really great presentations. We've got 2 more. Up next is Maryland's Child Care Challenge, which every working parent wants to hear right now. And presenting, we have Ruby Daniels, Christina Push, I hope I said that right, and Christina Lopez. Over to you all. If you're talking, I think you might still be on mute.
Sorry, I just unmuted myself. Thank you so much, esteemed panel, and a special thanks to our advisor, Zachary Kaplan. Our team consists of 3 of us that will be presenting today. Myself, Christina Push, Executive Director of the Maryland State Child Care Association, Christina Lopez, who is a student, educator, a mom of 6, and president of the Maryland AUIC, and Ruby Daniels, small child care business owner for 27 years in Howard County and the president of the Maryland State Family Child Care Association. And Ruby will start us off. Take it away, Ruby.
Thank you, Chris.
Next slide.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a story about Maryland's economic recovery, growth, future competitiveness, not just about childcare. The story begins with young working parents entering the workforce. One of the biggest considerations for entering the workforce are access to childcare and the monthly cost of childcare. Our team looked at the data, as you can see, and found that one of the biggest factors of economic loss of revenue and productivity is due to childcare constraints. Maryland loses $1.28 billion in revenue and economic productivity a year due to childcare constraints. Together, we can change this by engaging the private sector with the support of the public sector and come up with a creative and innovative solution to accessibility and affordability. I would give this back to our team leader, Chris Bush, to expand on how we can make this happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Ruby. Childcare is a public good and an essential service for the economy to thrive, but we're not here to tell you to fully fund childcare. We know that's not realistic for any state. We are here to rise to the challenges through innovative ideas. And our idea is a state-sponsored childcare challenge. Think Amazing Race meets Shark Tank. Over a 4-month period, our target is to bring together the private sector, large to small businesses, to propose innovative solutions to childcare challenges, including ideas to recruit, solicit, sustain employees who need accessible, affordable, consistent childcare in order to work in Maryland and be more productive in the workplace. We can do this through innovative partnerships and a minimal investment of $100,000 that has potential to yield a much bigger return on investment. And the concept starts with what we call the CCEE, an acronym for Child Care Challenge Exchange Event. It's a 1-day event bringing together companies, childcare providers, parents, academics, government agencies, and advocacy groups to discuss the challenges in Maryland, form strong teams, and make preliminary concept pitches to a panel. Just like this Hack-A-Thon initiative, we will need a cross-sector of representatives to be successful. This becomes a competition, including panelists, teams, and judges working together to mobilize and address childcare challenges. For example, we bring together a team of an employer such as an M&T Bank, some childcare business owners, the consumers of childcare services, MSDE, higher ed, and organizations with similar goals of public-private partnerships. Then 10 of those teams qualify past the first rounds, and they work together for 3 months to develop robust proposals. The most important provision for this initiative is inclusivity of the necessity of experts, mentors, innovators, and facilitators at the table participating to actively support the teams during the development period. And we end with, drum roll, please, the final pitch event, where a panel of experts selects 3 winning teams and then grants resources and provisions needed to pilot this concept. And the resources may not even require funding, but we're excited to find out. Our goal is to engage the private sector to create solutions for a public sector challenge. And the COVID crisis has brought many challenges, but in the time of crisis is our opportunity to rebuild even stronger. And I yield to my colleague and teammate, Christina Lopez, to convey the benefits and conclude the presentation.
Thank you, Chris. So the benefits to this approach is that it's not reliant on state funding entirely. It's taking a business-to-business approach. It's facilitating large to small business linkages, and it's supporting the childcare industry by linking providers directly to the main drivers of the market. We want to tap into Maryland's potential by leveraging private sector innovation to help solve this public sector economic and social challenge that has plagued us for way too long. $100,000 can lead to leveraging millions of dollars in private sector investment into childcare. We believe that childcare is a social justice issue. Ensuring all Marylanders have the same opportunities and supports to enter the workforce and advance is far more beneficial for an organization and community than any one individual. This approach creates greater levels of social inclusion and ecosystem diversity that will allow the best ideas to flourish, that will connect talented individuals from underrepresented backgrounds with opportunities for economic advancement and empower the best organizations to thrive. That is the Maryland that we believe in. Together and only together through these new innovative partnerships, we can rebuild the state's struggling childcare system, which is currently reeling from COVID-19. We can do it in a way that makes age-old problems like statewide shortage of affordable childcare largely disappear. And we can do it in a way that benefits families, companies, communities, and our state economy. This is not a conversation about prioritizing childcare industry over any other industry. It's about knowing how foundational childcare is to everything else this state depends on economically. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for that great presentation. I love the business-to-business approach. Let's see, are there any questions for this panel?
I don't have any questions. I think there's a great presentation. I will tell you that this is a topic that we hear about each and every day at Greater Baltimore Committee, particularly during the pandemic. And we know it's an issue that we need to be talking about. We've been talking internally, even from a legislative perspective. The initial $100,000 investment that you talk about, where would that come from? And then how exactly is that utilized?
So I'll take the information about how it will be utilized. For example, the one-day event would be, have some costs surrounding that, as well as costs for the experts over a 3 to 4 month period to help the teams. And for example, to access key data or perform certain analysis, maybe an economist or statistician to run some numbers to see the impact of an outcome like a tax benefit, et cetera.
Okay. I think that's a very minimal type of an investment for really what can be great results and solutions to a problem.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Oh, I see. Alan Gutierrez has a question.
Great presentation. I just wanted to, just an FYI, certainly it's a very important topic, and there's certain women business centers that we have across the country that have a curriculum base that help entrepreneurs that want to start and have a business that relates and caters to childcare. So, for example, I'd recommend the San Diego Women Business Center. They have a really great curriculum base that targets this and helps entrepreneurs that want to start and facilitate be available for that. So I just wanted to plug that in for you guys.
That's a great recommendation. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Well, seeing none, thank you so much for the innovative approach to a problem that I, as a working mom, sometimes face. So, okay, on to our final presentation on workforce development. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. We have Ellie Giles presenting and Ann Jarrett presenting. Also in the group were Antonio Santoro, Fred Coker, Ali Stamathis, and Karen Payton. Over to you.
Good afternoon. Our small group met several times to discuss the broad issues impacting workforce development. The prevailing theme was the impact of COVID-19 on sustainable employment and the changing occupational landscape. Next, please.
Recent studies explored the future of many occupations impacted by technological advances and how to best align and expand skilled training to prepare workers to keep up with the changing economy. Employers consistently identified a strong workforce as the #1 factor contributing to the growth and sustainability. However, traditional training processes have not kept up with industry growth, requiring training typically done by the employer to ensure competency. COVID-19 has hindered in-person training, apprenticeships, and on-the-job training, thereby requiring a strong investment in digital training. Small businesses are especially impacted. There is a need to safely increase access to job seekers across all demographics while concurrently addressing in-demand occupations. Next, please.
The team explored labor market data to identify the following in-demand occupations: healthcare, retail sales, technology, social and human services. The group also discussed the impact of COVID-19 on small business. Although unemployment is down from an April peak of 10.1%, it is more than twice the pre-COVID-19 rate of 3.3% in March, with many service occupational roles being modified and possibly eliminated. Next, please.
The team is offering 2 suggested solutions that can be applied in a flexible manner: geographic focus, industry focus, demographic focus, etc. So the first solution is to provide an incentive or a resource to small businesses that promote digital training. Digital occupational training is very much in development, as there are very few off-the-shelf kinds of programs that provide industry-led content that can blend both the theoretical and the practical knowledge as needed. Funds will be needed to support small businesses in the development and implementation of training content, utilizing multiple digital platforms such as online learning, virtual reality, augmented reality, and multimodality training. Individuals currently enrolled in unemployment should be able to use this training to fulfill their work search requirement so that they can maintain benefits while training. The costs are preliminary suggestions subject to the state budget allowances and concurrent federal government COVID funds if they're allocated. A $1 million investment would support the retention expansion of a minimum of 250 businesses that would recontribute to the state economy. These funds could be regenerated to support additional small businesses.
The second solution expands the current Maryland Business Works program to be applied in a more flexible way aimed at occupational sectors that may not have industry standard credentialing requirements or registered apprenticeships. The current Maryland Business Works requirement that training must result in industry recognized credential eliminates eligibility to many of the newest occupations from benefiting from this program, such as cyber technology, life sciences, and craft beer. The proposed costs, again, are preliminary suggestions. The current allocation to Maryland Business Works is $500,000. In order to better reach a more diverse industry pool, we recommend doubling the initial allocation. Next, please.
Both solutions enhance safe access for upskilling and reskilling workers to address the current and future occupational landscape. The return on investment is very high as digital training materials are effective and efficient. After the initial cost of development, digital training has the capacity to reach more job seekers, provide consistent competency-based training that is consistent with occupational demands of the employer. This investment in the workforce development is regenerative by prioritizing the needs of the employers and the employees first, which in turn will spur economic growth across the state, preserve the safety net for the unemployed individuals while safely providing them self-improvement activities as they seek to regain the dignity of work. This measure will also fortify our small business sector, which is a vital and significant contributor to Maryland's economy. Thank you.
Excellent. 13 seconds to spare. Let me hit cancel. Does anybody have any questions for our workforce development group? I guess I have one while we're waiting for other questions to pop up. And I'm particularly interested in the last point about the certifications. Do you know how many businesses there are, types of businesses there are that don't currently have a certification in the state of Maryland?
I don't have that number. I can just do it from a sector perspective. And as sectors begin to grow, especially as we start to have a merger between, let's say, a technological sector and a social sector, there's going to be more and more growth in businesses and innovation that at this time does not have a certification set up. I mean, part of that training would set up some kind of standardized training that I think would be really great through a digital because it's standardized right from the beginning. But as far as how many industries do not have a certification process at this time, I can't provide that answer.
Yeah, it's kind of hard because it's hard to prove a non-existent thing. But thank you. It's certainly been a problem in the agricultural sector. I know that much at least. Okay, we have a question from Dean Orr.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Obviously, you've identified a burning need here. I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit more about the $1 million cost for your digital training side of the house. If I heard you correctly, this would support 250 businesses. How was that calculation made? And is $1 million is not a small amount of money, but how digital training is often not as costly as other training. So I'm trying to see how you got to your $1 million figure and how you translated that into 250 businesses.
Okay, that's a great question. So what we started with was by taking a look at what the federal mandate, the WIOA, allows for each job seeker for training. And that number is $4,000. They cap it at $4,000. So we went ahead and utilized that number and then wanted to see, okay, if we did $4,000 per job seeker and under the assumption that each job seeker, one job seeker per business is basically what we did. So that's how we came up with the 250. And the 1 million was really an arbitrary number. We just really felt that we needed to have that impact. Saying that though, again, after that digital platform is developed, it can serve to train many more people under that initial investment. So it's really one of those things where it pays for itself.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'd like to thank you all for a fantastic presentation. We've maintained a pretty constant number of, about 45 people, 40 to 45 people on this call today. So they stayed through all the way to the very end. So last but certainly not least. So I guess that concludes our first ever small business policy hackathon. I would like to thank everybody so much for joining. I just wanted to say a few words about what happens next. What do we do with all these fabulous, fabulous ideas? If there's one thing I've learned about policymaking in my short term in this time in the Senate, it's that it keeps evolving. Some of these ideas will need additional conversation, additional work, adjustment to come to life. And one thing that our office can do is help to connect the people who are making the pitches with people on the expert review panel, or anybody else who chimes in on the YouTube site. We'll make sure that we have those connections. And I'll just, please reach out to my office. My email is katiefry.hester@senate.state.md.us, and my staff will put you in touch. I also would just like to make it very clear that the decision to put forward or not put forward legislation is one that every legislator retains for themselves. And participation in this event does not guarantee an introduction of a bill. That being said, I really love what I've heard today, and I look forward to having continued conversations about all of these policy ideas moving forward. So once again, I'd like to thank the University of Maryland and SBDC for serving as the first ever hosts. We kind of jumped into this and decided we wanted to do it, and by gosh, we got it done. I'd also like to thank the members of the Bipartisan Senate Small Business Caucus. And we had Senator Kagan, Senator Peters, Senator Eckert, Senator Rosapep, and a representative from Guy Gazzoni's office here today. I'd like to thank Secretary Schultz and all of our expert review panelists for asking such great questions. And of course, everybody who's tuned in today to watch on YouTube. I'd like to thank all of our presenters and all the work that went in behind all these great ideas in just a few short weeks. And I'd like to thank my staff. Nithin Venkatraman and Bridget O'Toole did a great job behind the scenes, working a lot of late nights. So they definitely deserve a few days off. So thanks again. I feel energized. I feel excited. Maryland certainly has a bright future ahead of itself. So with that, have a good evening and stay safe, everyone.